Hey guys, it's Joseph here, back on Joe Stuff again, and today we're going to be making a cool brick breaker game in Scratch. So I'm going to be showing you how to do this step by step from the very beginning, and even if you know nothing about programming or Scratch at all. So, to start with here, just going to pull up the Google homepage and type in scratch.mit.edu and then hit enter. That will bring you to the Scratch homepage right here. If you've already been using Scratch before, you probably know how to do this already, but if you're just getting on for the first time, this is how you get to Scratch website. So you have to go ahead and make a Scratch account. I'm not going to be showing you how to do that in this video, but there are plenty of videos out there about it, and it's pretty easy anyway. So once you have an account, or if you do already, go ahead and click on the little My Stuff folder. Now, as you can see, I have a lot of projects here, and you can check them out on the JMP07 profile on Scratch if you want to. But today we're going to be doing a brick breaker game. So go ahead up to the corner here and click on New Project. That'll load a project here, and as you can see, it's just like a empty project with no coding at all and just one cat on the screen. So we don't need the cat for this brick breaker game, so we're just going to go ahead and come down here to the bottom and click on the little trash can icon next to the cat down in the sprites panel. Go ahead and click that, and it'll just disappear, and instead it'll go over to the backdrops thing over here. So now we're inside the stage, but we are going to need some kind of stuff to do this game with, of course. So go ahead and head down here to this button. It'll pop up when you hover over it, and go ahead up here and click on Paint. So this is going to make a new sprite or a new actor kind of thing for the stage, a new item in your game, and go ahead and click on Paint. That'll open up a paint editor over here. If you want to get back to the code, just go up to the top and click on the little code panel, the costumes panel, and the sounds panel there. So you're just going to go to the costumes panel for now, and as you can see, it's just a blank, empty thing right here. So, but we're going to be making right now, to start with, we're going to make the paddle, which we're going to use for the ball to actually bounce off of and go flying to hit the blocks with. So go ahead down to the little square down here, which is the rectangle tool, and then head up to the fill, which is this right here, and select a color you like by pulling the sliders back and forth. There's three of them. One is color, one is saturation, and one is brightness. For making something like this, I'd recommend keeping the saturation and brightness at 100, which brightness will make the colors darker, saturation will make the colors like more washed out and whiter, more white, and then the color changes what color it is. So you can make it whatever color you want, but for me, I'm going to make it a sort of a green color, and I'm going to darken it just a little bit so it's not too bright there. And then when you're ready, when you're done picking your color, just click off. Then go to the outline right here. You can do an outline if you want to of a different color, but I'm just going to go down here and click on the little white square with a slash through it. That means it's just going to be completely transparent and just not there. So go ahead and head down here to the canvas and just click and drag out a shape that's pretty thin and long, something that would look like a little paddle to bounce the ball off of, a little thing like that. It should come up about that size on the screen right there. And so when you have it, you'll get this little blue around it. By the way, you can also click on these little zoom in and out things, and go ahead and just drag that right over the top of there. Okay, so now we have this little square right here, and just drag it over so that it'll snap to, with the little cross right there, it'll just snap to the middle, just to make sure it's centered. Then you can click off, and it'll be like this. You can now edit the colors if you want to. For instance, I'm just going to make it just a smidgen darker. When you do that and click off, you'll notice it doesn't change, but that's because it wasn't selected. Go over to the paint bucket tool, and then click, and that will make it the other color. So that's just about all we need for the paddle. You can add any other decorations that you want to, but you need to keep about the same kind of shape with this. I'm just going to leave it a green. Now you can head back over to the code, and we're actually going to go ahead and start programming up the game that we're making. Now this first part is going to be very, very simple right here. And for a simple part of the game, because all we have to do is make the paddle move back and forth to where the mouse is going to go. Right now it doesn't do anything, except you can click and drag it around, which isn't very useful. So, if you go over here to the coding blocks, these are the blocks which actually make things happen in the Scratch, in Scratch website here. This square out here on this side is where you put the code, and that's what we're going to be doing in just a second here. So go ahead and head down to the little yellow events and click on the circle right there. There's all different categories of types of blocks you can use, but we're going to need one from the events right now. Go ahead and up to the when green flag clicked, and of course this means when you click on this little green flag, it'll start off the program with whatever's underneath. That is the way you start the game, with the green flag usually. So go ahead and just drag one of those out. If you click and drag, it'll come out. Just drag one out and then let go, and it'll pop down on here. So now we're going to need a block from the motion category, the blue circle up there. And we're going to need it, and just go ahead and scroll down to the set rotation style block. Now, this is a little bit complicated to understand how this block works right here if you're just a beginner. But what it basically does is makes the rotation style of the block either be left, right, all around, or don't rotate. That pretty much means that it'll only flip in those directions. It'll so if you put it on left, right, it'll only flip left or right in a direction it's pointing. If you put it to don't rotate, it will not rotate at all. It'll just, it's really kind of complicated to understand at first. So for now, just go ahead and set the block there and select the don't rotate thing. We don't want this to rotate at all. We just want it to move to the position of the mouse. Next, go to the control category here and click on a forever loop and drag that out. The forever, of course, just means that it keeps on doing whatever's inside of here, inside of the forever loop, until either the red flag is clicked or something inside of the blocks tells it to stop. It'll just keep going for the whole game. So we're going to go back up to the motion blocks again, and go ahead and grab a point towards block. The point towards mouse pointer one, like that. And just pop it in there. Now, the reason this rotation style to don't rotate matters is because if we don't want it to actually point towards the mouse pointer, we just want it to move along to the mouse pointer. So if it points to it but doesn't rotate at all, it'll still work right. So if you were to set this right here to all around rotation style, then the thing would do this. But we don't want it to do that. We don't want it to rotate at all. So if we set it to don't rotate, the direction of it changes, but the actual sprite itself doesn't turn. Go ahead and click the red flag so we can move on here. Now grab a move 10 steps block and put it underneath inside the forever loop. And then grab a set Y block, which is down here at the bottom. Not change Y, it's set Y. Go ahead and drag it there. And then we're going to go ahead and inside of the field right here, we're going to go ahead and set it to -140. That means it won't actually go to the mouse pointer. It'll always stay flat across here. And that is all the code that we're ever going to need for this paddle. If you go up and test it, then as you can see, it floats over to where the mouse is. It doesn't go to the mouse, and it doesn't point towards the mouse, but it sort of glides over to where the mouse is. You can change this move block right here. The smaller it is, the slower it'll move along to it, making it harder. And the faster it is, the faster it'll do it. It'll basically just stick to the mouse. But 10 is pretty good, so I would leave it at that to start with, and then you can experiment with it later. So go ahead up and click on the little red stop sign, because now we are going to move on to the next part of this, which is going to be the little ball that bounces around everywhere. So to make this, then it's going to be a little more complicated, but we're going to go ahead and start by making the sprite itself. So go down to the choose a sprite button here and go ahead and click on that, because we're going to choose. and go ahead and we're just going to choose one from here. So there's several different kinds of balls. There's a basketball and a baseball and just a plain ball. You can even use like an apple or something, or a button if you wanted to. But I'm going to be using the tennis ball for this one. So we're just going to scroll on down a little ways here to where, and then find the tennis ball. Click on that. And that'll bring in a little tennis ball right here. That'll be about a good size, so we can leave it just like that. So inside the tennis ball, you notice that, hey, the code disappeared, but no, it didn't. It's still, if you go down here and click on a different sprite, it's still there. You just have to look at the code that's for each one. So inside the tennis ball, now we're going to make even more code. This one's going to be a bit more. There's going to be a bit more code inside of this one. Okay, so the code that we're going to be putting in here is longer. And so the first block is going to go ahead, we're going to go ahead and head over to the events category here. And you're going to need another green flag click just like the other one. Just drag it out and set it there. Now, we're going to go ahead and go to the motion blocks up here and add a go to block. You can see it says go to an X and Y position, not go to random position, but there's little bubbles here to type stuff in. Go ahead and set them both to 0, so X0 and Y0. Then, go down to point in direction block, not the point towards, the point in direction. Drag it underneath. And set that to 135. You'll notice that there is this little wheel right here that you can select things with, but you can also enter a thing yourself. Go ahead and set that to 135. Then go to the control blocks and drag a wait 1 second block out and stick it underneath. We're just going to leave that at 1 second. You can change that though later if you want to. Now grab a forever block out and stick it underneath that wait 1 second block. Now go up to the motion and grab a move 10 steps block. That's going to make it move along in where it's going. Now grab an if on edge bounce, and that's exactly what it says. If it's on the edge of the screen, it's going to bounce off. Then go into the control blocks and pull out an if-then block. What this block does is it means if whatever is inside of this little shape right here, if whatever block you put in there, if that's true, then do whatever's inside, but only if that's true. So go down to the operators, and you'll notice that some of these blocks actually have the same shape as this thing does, and that's because you can slot them in there. So grab an OR block, so it'll have, and then snap it in right there. It'll have 2 slots that look the same as the other one now. Now go into the sensing blocks, which is light blue, and pull out a touching block and stick it there. And set it to, go ahead and set that to the sprite 1, whichever thing is your paddle here. It'll probably be default as sprite 1, but we should probably change it to something better like paddle. My thing is going crazy here. Paddle, that's right. Now, we do need to add something else into the other side of this OR block, but that's going to be if it's touching one of the bricks and bounces off. That's what it's going to do. So, for the present, go ahead and take out the touching paddle block and take out the OR block. We're going to need the OR block later, but we don't need it quite yet. So, slot the touching paddle block back in there, and just go ahead up to the motion blocks and grab a point and direction block. Now we're going to need a little bit of math here, so if you go down to the operators, you need to get a minus block. It's a round shaped one like this, and it has a little minus sign. And then go up to the motion and grab a direction block and put it onto the right side of that. In the left side, enter 180. Now, what this does is it makes it bounce off of the paddle, because the if on edge bounce already has this part built in. So if it's on the edge, it will turn away into a different direction and bounce off. But this is pretty much just coding up the same thing, but as for the paddle instead. So now it'll not only bounce off the edges, but it'll also bounce off the paddle right here. Now go to the control blocks here and grab a repeat until block, which is right down here. That means it'll repeat whatever's in here or repeat whatever's inside of here until this is true. So go ahead into the operators down here, the green ones, and grab a not block and put it there. That means whatever's in here will now be opposite. So in this case, it's in the sensing. Grab a touching mouse pointer, but we're gonna change that to paddle. So repeat until not touching paddle. Move 10 steps. Now this was a whole bunch of code that we had to put in here, so it might be a little bit confusing right now, but it should work. If we go up to the green flag and click it, now our thing bounces. The ball actually bounces around the screen. Now right now there's no way to lose, and there's not even any bricks to play with, but you notice it does bounce off your paddle and off the edges all around it there, including the bottom. So the next piece of this is going to be the bricks, which is the last big piece of the thing, and then we'll tie it all together with some little signs that say game over and you win. So go ahead and click the little red stop sign there, and then go down to choose a sprite and click on it. Scroll down to button 2 right here and click on that. We shouldn't have to change this too much, although you can see how big it is, but we can use some set size blocks to change that. So go over to the events block. Now while you're inside the button right here, make sure you can also change this name to bricks instead. Now yes, this is going to be bricks, not just one brick. So go up and grab a when green flag clicked block, and then underneath that go to the looks. This is a new category we haven't looked at yet, and grab a set size block. You'll see by default it's at 100, but we're going to go ahead and set that to 50. That means it'll be half the size. If we go and click the green flag, you notice it gets a lot smaller because it's 50% of the size. Now go into the motion and grab a go to block. Set the left side to -200 and set the right side, which is Y, to 140. So we want to start by going to kind of up in the corner of the screen up here, because basically what we're going to do is we're going to make copies of this one and string them all out like this in sort of lines to make it so the ball can bounce off of them so that we don't have to have a whole bunch of sprites about the same thing. I'll show you that in a second, but go ahead into the looks to start with here and grab a hide block and put it under there. We don't want it to show right away. We also don't want it to show the original one at all. We just want it to show its copies. Its copies are called clones, and we're going to be messing with those in just a second. But to start with here, first of all, we'll grab a control in the control category, grab a repeat number of times block. Not a repeat until, but you see it has a little number right here, which means it'll repeat the number of times you put in there. So put in a 4 right there, but then go ahead and grab another one and put a 7 in there. And you might be wondering why we want to do this, why we're doing this, instead of just putting a 28 in for the whole thing. But the reason we are doing it is because we want to have some of the stuff repeat 4 times and some of it repeat 7 times. So go into the motion and grab a change Y block, which is down here. It's change Y, not set Y this time. And set the thing over here to -30. Then get a set X block, not change X, set X. And we're going to set it to -200, which may be the default of what it already is. If it's not, set it to -200. Now inside the repeat 7, we're going to put a create clone block. So in the control blocks, scroll down here at the bottom here almost, it says create clone of myself. Now there's a little drop down and you can create clone of other sprites, but we're going to leave it on myself this time. That means it'll just make an exact copy of it, and we can mess with those copies to do what we want them with. Now go up to the motion and grab a change X block and drag it in underneath the create clone. And we're going to change X by 65. So there's the main chunk of code that's going to go in here. But we have to make the clones do what we want them to do, which is basically disappear when the ball hits it. So go into the control blocks and grab a when I start as a clone block and drag it out. It looks a lot like the green flag clicked one, but it's not. It's when I start as a clone. So pretty much, it'll create a clone and then jump over here, and then the clone will do whatever is underneath. So first of all, we want it to show, because we hid it over here, so we want to go ahead and make it show. So go into the looks category, and scroll down and grab a show block. Then into the control blocks here, grab a forever block. We want it to keep on checking to see if it's been hit. So now grab an if block and put it there, inside, and then grab a sensing block, or go into the sensing category and grab a touching block. And put a touching block in there. We're going to go ahead and set that to tennis ball, which is the thing that's bouncing around. So if it's touching the tennis ball, what do we want it to do? Well, we want it to disappear, right? So go ahead over to the control blocks here and delete this clone right here. Okay, but now what we have to do is make it so that the ball will actually bounce off of the brick when it hits it. So go down to the tennis ball, and I don't know if you remember, but back here we had this OR block, and I said that was going to be so that it could hit off of the bricks. So drag out the touching paddle block and put it in one side of the OR. Then go to the sensing, grab another touching block, and set the drop down to bricks. Then grab the middle of the OR, and you can drag it around right here where it says OR, and then chuck the whole thing into there. So now not only will it bounce off of the bricks, but it'll also bounce off of the paddle. So now go down to the bricks again, because we aren't finished quite there yet. And what do you know, we actually are just about done with that one. So there's going to be one more block we're going to add right here, but I'm going to show you that in just a second. But first of all, look at what happens when you click the green flag. Bricks row themselves out, and the bricks disappear when the ball bounces on them. Isn't that cool? How just a little bit of code like that can make a cool game like this. We aren't quite done though, because we're going to add a point scoring system where you can actually score points, and you can also lose and win by getting all the blocks. So right now you see that you actually don't have to do anything. The whole game will actually run itself by just bouncing the ball around, and the ball will eventually bounce all the bricks away. Like that. But that's not really what we want, right? So click the red flag, and you notice that the bricks disappear, because clones always disappear when you click on the little stop sign. Then go over to your choose a sprite button here, and go up to paint and click on that. We need to make two signs. One of them is going to be game over, and one's going to be you win. So we'll start by making a game over sign. Go over to the text tool right here, and you can select a font if you want, but I'm just going to leave it on the one default there. And go ahead and set it to a nice red. And then, preferably in capital letters, type game over. And then we'll drag it out nice and big so it'll be over the whole screen. And then you can center it using those little crosshairs there. So now you have this big game over sign. Now go down to make a new sprite here. Click on paint. And then go up to the fill color and select a nice green color for the you win. And then type you win. Probably best to add a exclamation point after the you win. And put it there. Right now we just have these jumbled letters up here, so we're going to change that. The first thing that we need to do though is to hide these, right? They don't look very good to start with here. So go up to the events right here and drag down a when green flag clicked block, and then in the looks category grab a hide block. So that just means when you click the green flag it hides, and as you can see it does. The you win block doesn't, the you win sprite doesn't, but you can actually copy pieces of code into another sprite by clicking and dragging down to here, and then you can see it kind of wiggles back and forth to show you're over it, and then let go, and there it is. It just pops into there. If you go over here, it's in there now. And so, but now so see both of them disappear there. Now we're going to be making a broadcast message. A broadcast message is where it'll actually send a message from one sprite to another sprite to do something. So grab a when I receive block. So this is going to be receiving the message, this block right here. And make a new message that says show game over. And hit OK. And then after that, in the looks, put a show. So we basically want to make it so that if you win, then it'll show a you win sign and then stop everything. And if you lose, it'll show a you lose sign and stop everything. So you go into the control and scroll down and drag out a stop all block and put it right there. Now grab the same thing, the same piece, drag it over to the you win, and then in here drag it off of up here. Except we don't want it to be show game over. We want it to be show you win. Like that. So now it'll do pretty much the same thing right here. Now go back over to your bricks over here. And well, actually the next thing we need to do is make a score. So we're going to be making a variable for the score. A variable is a little box up in the corner here that stores a number that you can use later. So it can be a score or anything like that. It can just store a number and then change it to different things. So by default, there's one called my variable in there. But you can go up to click make a variable and name it score. And hit OK. As soon as you do that, you'll see that it appears up in the corner here. You can also change the looks of it a little bit. If you right click on it, then you can do large readout, which is without the name, or a slider, which is like a slider like this. But of course, we don't want people being able to change their score, so probably the best thing to do is set it to normal readout to start with. There's also a little checkbox next to it over here in the variable tab, and you can turn it on and off. So now grab your when I start to clone script here, and we're going to put a change block right here. Put it in over top of the delete this clone block, and click the drop down and set that to score. Change score by 1. So pretty much when it hits a block, then the score will go up by 1. But of course, we don't want people just getting a lot of score in the okay. So for instance here, if you get score and you can see the score increments like this, then when you stop the project and then start it again, you still have score 3. Even though you're not supposed to, because it needs to reset to 1 or to 0 every time you restart the game. So grab a set variable block and put it underneath a green flag clicked over here. And then set the drop down to score. So it'll always set the score to 0 now. So that's how that works. Now go over to the you win block and actually stay in the bricks block here. And underneath the one green flag clicked block here, all the way underneath this whole script, put a forever block, and then put a if block. So forever if, basically it's always checking to see if this is right. Now go to the operators, grab an equals block and snap it in there, and then in the variables place here, grab your score, and now you have to do a little bit of math here to see how many blocks there is. You can just do 4 times 7 because it basically makes 4 rows of 7 blocks. So there's 7 blocks in each row, which means there's 28. So score of 28 right here. So if score equals 28 basically, then we want to stop the game. Go into the events and grab a broadcast block right here. And set that not show game over, but to show you win. So if your score equals 28, that means that all the blocks have been broken, and it should show a you win sign. But if your ball goes too low, then we have to broadcast that you lost. So go over to the tennis ball sprite here, and underneath all this if stuff right here. In fact, we're going to go ahead and make a new script for this actually, because we don't want any lag over here. So grab it when green flag clicked block out of the events, and then go to the control and get the forever if and grab the forever if blocks. You're pretty familiar with this combination by this time probably, and you're going to end up using this a lot if you're going to program from scratch. Now go into the operators and grab a less than block right here. That pretty much means whatever's in this side is if whatever's in this side is less than this, then it'll do whatever's under here. Then go into the motion and scroll down to these little bubble shaped ones and grab the Y position one and put it in right there. And then on this side put negative 140. So basically that means if the Y position of the ball is lower than the paddle, that means we want it to say game over. So then go to the events. We're almost done here. Grab a broadcast thing and make sure it's set to show game over. And that should do it. If you go over and hit the green flag, then it should bounce around like this, taking out blocks as it goes. And then if you miss, like I'm about to here, then a game over sign comes up. One thing you may want to do if you want the game over to be centered, then go to, in the when green flag clicked, go to the motion, and then instead of 3628 is the default. If we set this to 0 and 0, it will go to the middle. And we'll just do the same thing in the you win. Just like that. And that should do it. If you play till the end, then it'll come out as you win. If you lose like this, then it should be a game over. This is a pretty cool game, and it's really easy to make. A very simple, basic one, but it's pretty fun. So make sure you save it, and you can go up here and name it something like Brick Breaker Game. Like that. And then you have to hit, if there's a little button that says save now up here, you can click that. Otherwise, you can press Control S and it will save. So I'm excited to see what ones you make. Please comment the link down below, and be sure to hit the share button up here in the corner so I can see it. And until next time, this is Joe Stuff.